So I've spoken a lot on this channel about like various rich charitable figures. I guess the person who has got my attention the most is Mr. Beast. Now, why I've criticized Mr. Beast more than people like the subject of today's video, Leonardo DiCaprio, is because Mr. Beast's charity work seems just so insincere. It just feels like it is all designed for attention. It's really like the most generic thing ever. Currently, you probably have seen if you've been watching my channel, his obsession is Africa, and he goes around places in sub-Saharan Africa, I think mainly West Africa, helping them with water and making these like really, really bad AI thumbnails for clickbait on his channel, and he gets really mad whenever he gets any criticism. It's pretty clear this is a guy who doesn't do charity work because he has a deep care for the people of like West Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and all the regions that he's filmed these videos in. But there are lots of rich people who do charity work because they take like a special interest in something. Leonardo DiCaprio is one of those wealthy people who seems to actually care about specific issues. This video isn't to praise him, but I think if you actually follow his work and follow what he does, it's pretty clear he is driven by some sort of environmentalism. Now, Leonardo DiCaprio isn't a billionaire. Apparently, his net worth is even less than Mr. Beast. But I think what we're going to talk about today applies to millionaire people who do charity work, billionaires who do it, and talk about both like how it is undemocratic, considering a lot of these people probably aren't paying much taxes, and also how often this version of environmentalism you get in elite circles is very specific and often resembles the status quo's own interests. Now, of course, capitalism and environmentalism don't really go hand in hand, but if you are old enough, you remember being raised in the age of, I guess, neoliberal environmentalism, where we were really indoctrinated as children into like saving the planet through individual actions. And when you're indoctrinated in that and you don't talk about the root causes of the problem, you would view like Leonardo DiCaprio's charity work, environmentalism, very, very positively. But when you view it in a more like systems-based analysis and see as hypocrisy as well, that's when you start seeing like the bad sides of it. And we're not going to talk too much about like the positive aspects of Leonardo DiCaprio today. I will say a lot of these projects he's done like are pretty good. He has done good work, and I think because he obviously clearly cares about it, I'm not saying he's a great guy or anything, that makes his hypocrisy even more staggering, especially his relationship with Israel historically. Not just historically, but of course what you've probably seen in the headlines, him helping develop an eco hotel thing in Israel itself while it carries out the worst crimes against humanity of this century. And even if you're just very cynically thinking about the impact on the climate and you buy all the propaganda that Israel is selling you, and even if you view it as a war, it's still like really devastating for the global environment, not to mention like the Palestinian environment. So Leonardo DiCaprio, like most like Western celebrities and even Western activists, is a massive hypocrite. And yes, he is palling around with Jeff Bezos now. Seems to at least be ashamed of it, but again, shows what a hypocrite he is. So before we go any further, please follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Blue Sky and on Instagram. And also, if you want to support my work, please check out my Patreon page and check out my YouTube memberships. So Leonardo DiCaprio is a pretty private individual. In the age of us knowing every little thing about every single celebrity, he's someone you don't really know that well in terms of a social media persona. He's not on his stories all the time, posting about his latest holidays. He's not sharing memes and shit on his story. I'm guessing his social media team pretty much exclusively posts about his environmentalism, his charity work, and maybe they'll drop a trailer for a new film he's in. But if you go on his page, it is pretty much just dedicated to various different environmental causes. He's very big on saving the Amazon rainforest. He's helped develop films that show native culture in the Amazon. He's also helped develop films about Native Americans in North America. He helped produce this film on Sitting Bull. And if you just go through it, he tackles loads of very, very specific environmental issues. And they aren't all focused around animals, because you often get that with environmentalists. They just focus on animals, and there's nothing wrong with focusing on animals, and even very specifically on animals. But when it's a bit more broad, you can see how that ideology can have these blind spots around things like Gaza. Not so much when you are specifically focusing on how humans are impacted as well. And he has organizations like Rewild. He sits on the board of the WWF. He is a UN ambassador. I forgot what specifically it's for. I think it's for peace or something, ironically. So he has used his influence and his money to do loads of charity work, environmentalism, around loads and loads of specific issues. And he dedicates his platform to doing that. And he is one of the most famous actors in the world, and he has been for the last 20 years. So you would say a celebrity who is foregoing using their social media page exclusively for vanity, it's a good thing that he is dedicating his massive platform to environmentalism. And it would be better if more rich celebrities would do stuff like this. And he's essentially transformed himself from just an actor to someone who is very well respected by political establishments. He's someone who raises money for the Democratic Party. They seek his endorsement. It seems these days his charity work is more of a part of his identity than his films, because he isn't a prolific actor these days. He's been in a few things in the last couple of years, but there was a time where it felt like he was in absolutely everything. And that has definitely stopped as he's got older. And if you've been following him from a long time and you see all his charity work, you probably have a pretty high opinion of him, specifically on that. I know he has a terrible reputation with women, because he goes through girlfriends every single month, it feels like. A lot of them are way younger than him, ranging from 19 to 25 years old, so much so it's just become a massive topic of conversation that he exclusively goes for people under 25 and then breaks up with them. When they go over that age limit, there's been rumors online that he makes women sign NDAs so they can't discuss anything about him, because you don't really get these sensationalized stories about people's relationships with him. But none of that has been proven. It's more tabloid speculation, because you don't really know much about him. And we don't really know much about his private life, especially in the realms of contemporary celebrity. I obviously think he's a great actor, but he's also an absolutely massive hypocrite. So the Israel relationship is absolutely inexcusable, but we're going to get into that. And let's talk about the Jeff Bezos thing. So he went to Jeff Bezos' wedding in Venice, which had a massive carbon footprint, because so many people were flying private jets to Venice to attend this wedding. The only saving grace with him is it seemed like he was at least really ashamed to be there, and he was wearing a baseball cap over his face. Maybe it was shame, maybe he's just very weird about his privacy. But if you wanted to read that in the best light about his relationship with Jeff Bezos, again, if you ignore the terrible environmental cost of Amazon, how it treats its workers, Jeff Bezos' own personal carbon footprint through the use of private jets and yachts, if you wanted to be more forgiving, which I wouldn't, because I'm not forgiving of many people, especially rich people, you would say the reason he wants to get into bed with Jeff Bezos, not literally, is because he comes from this old way of neoliberal environmentalism where he's thinking about, how do I collaborate with as many people as possible for the goodness of humanity? The type of neoliberal environmentalism we were all taught in school. You would be taught in school that if Leonardo DiCaprio went to Jeff Bezos to try and collab on some sort of environmental thing, that's a good thing. Not that it's insanely hypocritical, and either Jeff Bezos or both of them are using this environmentalism as cover to help with their reputation. Which, if there was any collaboration between these two on environmentalism, that's why Jeff Bezos would do it. And then recently, you saw more of this because they went on a double date, and Leonardo DiCaprio was actually boarding Jeff Bezos' yacht. So just Vogue reporting, it was in Ibiza. So him getting more cozy with Jeff Bezos, one of the world's supervillains, I think everyone would say that he is a hypocrite. And you could defend him maybe by talking about the ideology he comes at this from, oh, the world isn't perfect, I have to collaborate with all these world leaders and business leaders to actually do something about the environment, and it's a necessary evil. But even if he thinks like that and you're giving him the benefit of the doubt, again, I don't think I would, it still just shows how hollow neoliberal environmentalism is that you have to have one rich celebrity taking an interest in something niche, going to the richest man on earth to try and convince him to also take an interest in that one specific thing. But it absolutely does nothing for the environment on a systems level, even if you are having this influence on a very powerful man who is destroying the environment. It won't change anything in the long run. Like, yes, maybe you could save a specific thing. Maybe you could save like a part of the Amazon rainforest. Maybe you could save a coral reef in Australia. And while that might be a good thing in a vacuum, the wider problem is it does nothing and it helps Jeff Bezos continue getting away with destroying the environment. So even if we take Leonardo DiCaprio on his face that he deeply cares about this stuff, and I think he does in a way, even if we view him as some sort of cynical political operator trying to work in this really flawed system to get this change done, it still doesn't work. And the next part of this video probably shows you the flaws in that ideology represented by DiCaprio and others, is that he both hasn't said anything about what's happening in Gaza, like at all, hasn't said anything, even right now where you see loads of even pro-Israel politicians coming out and talking about the famine. He still hasn't said anything. He did raise $10 million for Ukraine. So again, playing into this like neoliberalism I'm talking about, he is very comfortable doing stuff that the establishment like deem acceptable, but when it comes to something like Israel, he's way more hesitant, and even right now he can't bring himself to say anything. And even if you buy Israel's propaganda, like I said, this story came out in May, carbon footprint of Israel's war on Gaza exceeds that of many entire countries. So the first 15 months of Israel's war on Gaza will be greater than the annual planet warming emissions of 100 individual countries, exacerbating the global climate emergency on top of the huge civilian death toll. A study shared exclusively with The Guardian found that long-term climate costs of destroying, clearing, rebuilding Gaza could top 31 million tons of carbon dioxide. This is more than the combined 2023 annual greenhouse gases emitted by Costa Rica and Estonia, yet there is no obligation for states to report military emissions to the UN climate body. Overall, researchers estimate that the long-term climate cost of what Israel has done in Gaza, Yemen, Iran and Lebanon is equivalent to charging 2.6 billion smartphones or running 84 gas power plants for a year. And just some other little notes about the study, almost 30% of greenhouse gases generated in that period came from the US sending 50,000 tons of weapons and other military supplies to Israel. So if you were at your core an environmentalist who cared about planet Earth, who wanted to save the environment for whatever reason, surely you would be motivated to speak out about what Israel did to Gaza and the surrounding nations, right? Because even if you buy their propaganda, you don't even have to frame it in a way that's sympathetic to the Palestinians. You could call for a ceasefire or the war to end, because at the very least, if you care about the global environment, even if you don't care about this one issue, that would be bizarre, but you could still frame it in this certain way of how it is just contributing so much CO2, right? But he didn't do that, and he hasn't done that. And of course, what you saw, he's recently gone ahead with this hotel project. And this goes back to a pretty long-standing relationship he's had with Israel. There's something called Israel Magazine. I have never heard of this. And I actually found this on Tumblr, like a quote from it. But the Israel Magazine issue that it's quoting from doesn't seem to exist online anymore. I don't know if this is 100% like a real quote from him. So basically, he was dating a model, Bar Refaeli, and she was Israeli. And he was spotted in Israel in, I think, like 2007, and he met the Prime Minister. And this was notable because it was one of his like longest relationships. So apparently in the article, he said this: "Of course, I love this country where I've kept many friends. While I was with Bar, that I came to Israel several times. I visited her family who lived in the region of Hod Hasharon, and we even considered buying or building a house in Tel Aviv to live a few months of the year. We thought about getting married at the time, but fate decided otherwise. In 2010, I celebrated my 36th birthday in Israel, and I brought my mother, Ermelin, who realised her dream of discovering Jerusalem, and also the actor Kevin Connolly, one of my best friends. We travelled across the country, and I had the great honour to meet Shimon Peres, and also to be received by Netanyahu and his wife. With Bar Rafaeli, I discovered the beauty of Israel and also all shades of Israeli society. as in the US, there is in this country a creative energy. He talks about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As an actor and a film producer, I'm a big fan of Israeli art, one of the most inventive and interesting in the world. Maybe one day I will produce or I will play in a film by an Israeli director. From the moment there is a good script and ideas, I'm open to all suggestions. I'm a little skeptical of that quote because it doesn't really sound like him. It feels like it could maybe have been translated from Hebrew into French and then into English. That could be a possibility. But also, I don't think it really matters if he definitely gave this quote, because a lot of what's stated there are just straight up facts about his relationship with Israel. Even if the part at the end about it having a great culture and great art and stuff, even if that was added in or is bullshit, it doesn't really matter. He has been to Israel a lot. He seems to have an affinity for it. You see here, this is back in 2017. Leonardo DiCaprio praises Israeli ingenuity on social media, posted a photo of a future Israeli power plant that is expected to boast the tallest solar thermal tower in the world. He captioned the photo of the arid landscape of Israel's Negev desert will look like a futuristic movie in the near future. The country is building the tallest solar thermal tower in the world above its dusty sands, surrounded by 50,000 mirrors. The 250 meters high tower should be able to produce enough power for about 5% of Israel's population when it's concluded. The sunlight will be reflected by the mirrors to the boiler at the top of the tower, and the boiler will be able to convert them and heat water to steam, turn turbine in a conventional power plant. He also has actual investments in Israel, which have this environmental framing, which is just like, as you saw there, it feels like some sort of like eco-fascism. And I feel like this a lot with Israel, even before like 2021 or 2023, they export water, while in Gaza, like I said, before 2021, getting clean water was really, really hard. So the nation that blockades you into a strip of land and denies access of so much necessary and vital supplies to the region is exporting its own water abroad. And even with this, like talking about like this environmentalist turbines. And here's another thing as well. Leonardo DiCaprio is investing in Israel's Aleph Farms. Israel's Aleph Farms and Dutch company Mossa Meat, two food tech companies in the emerging field of cultivated meat, announced on Wednesday an investment from Leonardo DiCaprio. DiCaprio said, "One of the most impactful ways to combat the climate crisis is to transform our food system. Mossa Meat and Aleph Farms offer new ways to satisfy the world's demand for beef while solving some of the most pressing issues of the current industrial beef production. I'm very pleased to join them as an advisor and investor as they prepare to introduce cultivated beef to consumers." And of course, the more recent one, Leonardo DiCaprio faces backlash for co-financing luxury hotel in Israel. According to Israeli business newspaper Globes, the Tel Aviv District Planning and Building Committee has approved the construction of the 51,000 square meter project. The Jerusalem Post also reports that the eco-certified resort will consist of 14 floors and 365 rooms. DiCaprio, who is currently a United Messenger for Peace, will hold a 10% stake in the project, with the remaining shares being divided between other groups. So I think these investments just show like the absolute futility of neoliberal environmentalism exemplified by someone like Leonardo DiCaprio. So you see groups in Israel doing things that could help the environment. So we could create new ways of creating beef that don't rely on these massive cattle ranches, that rely on deforesting the Amazon rainforest, which obviously directly contributes to CO2 emissions, and then methane obviously from the cows themselves. So this company in Israel is creating this alternative. Let me invest there with like no ethical hang-ups. And then while they're doing the worst crimes against humanity, here's an eco hotel in a vacuum. Oh, it's an eco hotel. It's going to be, environmentally friendly. Let me just invest in it and not see the problems or the wider implications, or rewarding a country with business that most of the population are supporting, again, the worst crimes against humanity, that are also directly contributing to the problems that the beef thing you invested in is trying to solve, right? So it just shows you neoliberal environmentalism is just complete hypocrisy. Leonardo DiCaprio is a complete hypocrite, and his environmentalism is selective and about like these individual projects. It just reminds me so much of all the shit I heard growing up. And the way to like solve it is through individual action. So if we only had more people like Leonardo DiCaprio, the world would be saved. And like I said at the start, while I would rather more celebrities use their platform to do environmental work than just like post selfies or some shit like that, it still never tackles the real heart of the problem. And what causes climate change? what causes economic destruction, what destroys native people's lands, what causes all of this. It's primarily the economic system. And jumping into bed with the people who have benefited most of the system and are maintaining the system, like Jeff Bezos, or doing business with people in apartheid Israel and investing in their projects and stuff like that, just ensures the environment will never be saved. Like, you are directly collaborating with the destroyers of the environment, and he probably views it in a different way to me. But again, that's what happens when you're just like a privileged, rich actor who cares about something and then thinks you're doing the right thing, but you come from a certain generation. Because the issue is capitalism. The issue is the for-profit system we have. And even people like David Attenborough have been a bit more explicit about this recently, because you can't ignore it. Corporations destroying the planet. It's governments in bed with corporations. So saving parts of the Amazon rainforest in a vacuum, great. Saving environments around the world. This is obviously something that is better than doing nothing, but it's not going to stop anything either. We could have a million Leonardo DiCaprios investing in loads of stuff. Like, it wouldn't change anything. And it doesn't. And his investment in Israel just shows the moral bankruptcy of this ideology, the futility of it, and how there's just no consistency in that, because he doesn't care about the Palestinians and he cares about Israel, he literally has no qualms in doing business with a state that is destroying the Palestinian environment and contributing massively to CO2 emissions. And he's not alone. So there's just general problems of rich people doing charity work. And I can recognize there are benefits to it, and even seeing public figures do this, but it's just not the 1990s anymore. It's not the early 2000s. We do not live in this world anymore where we all believe in individualist ideology that personal recycling will save the planet, saving water will save the planet, saving energy will save the planet, doing little things on your own will save the planet, investing in green energy, like green capitalism, will not save us. Green capitalism hasn't saved us, and there's actually no incentive for the capitalist class to save us under green capitalism. I think a lot of it is just PR cover so we don't get really mad at them. You probably saw that story recently that all these billionaire tech bros are building massive bunkers. They probably know what's going to happen in the coming decades, and no amount of greenwashing is going to protect people's anger at people like Jeff Bezos. But let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.